I'm Janet, and today we're going to be stamping some ephemera pieces to put into our stash. And I am working out of an old dictionary book, and you can see here as I've torn out the pages, they start to get a little ragged on me. And so what I am found that works best is, because I don't really care about this border here, I want the words, using an X-Acto and going right into that seam there gives me a very nice break on my pages to pull them out. And so I wanted to share that with you. If you're working in an old book and you're having trouble getting the pages to come out, running a knife along that edge seems to work well. And so I still have the cover on this one. I could rip the cover off. However, this is just one of the books I am using, and it, because it's so fat, it's going to have a lot of pages still for use, and it's the color is what I am interested in. So I'm going to clean up my space and get ready to stamp on these. Alright, so to make my process easier, what I have here is I have my MISTI, and I have a sticky mat in my MISTI. And so I put my page in, and then I have a sheet of stamps, and I am going to be stamping all of these at once. So what I want to do is lay out as many as I can get on this book page, and I have the words all going in the same direction as the page underneath it. I don't know if that's important to you or not, but that's what I'm doing. And unfortunately, these are individuals and they're not stuck together, so I have to lay them out one by one. And you can see here, once I've done it, I might stamp more than one page. And the reason that I'm doing this in a stamping platform is because I need to make sure that everything gets stamped well, since I'm stamping a lot of stamps at one go. I don't care for this gap area here, so I'm going to put my type over this type here, and then I have an image that I don't want to stamp on. And so you can see here that the process, it takes a little bit of time to set everything up. I'm going to go with Imagine down here. All right, so it's taken me, a little bit of time to line everything up. I have a few more pages that I want to do the same thing with. I've got some little words here that I think are really cute, and then I've got these, and I'm just going to stamp all of them and get them on the page. And then to cut them apart or to ink them up, I can do that later, or I can do it while I'm sitting down watching TV. So here I'm creating something for me to work on, so I don't have idle hands watching TV. And so I'm inking it up, and I'm using Versaclear because I want a permanent ink that I can then, if I get it wet, or if I want to ink around the edges, I have a more permanent stamp. And what I'm doing here is using a dry eraser for a whiteboard to push down on the surface. And so you can see here the importance of a stamping platform, because I've got one that didn't stamp at all, and I want a better dark image on these. Now, somewhere in my stash I have some tea dyed paper or coffee dyed paper, and I may put that in here and stamp on those too, just so I don't have the word background. The other thing I could do, now this one just is not stamping well. I don't know what's giving it a trouble. If it's too close to the edge there, if I push really hard, I can get it to go down. Same with this one down here. But you can see now, once I have them lined up, I can go in and do multiple pages. All right, I think I'm going to go for one more inking of this. Because I'm stamping such a large area, I really do need to put some pressure in it. I'm sitting down, but if I were standing up, I could probably get even a better pressure on these. So yeah, those are starting to look like what I want. All right, so there is one and done. And then I can lift this up here. And if I put my magnet in right here and right there, I know where to line up my next page. So now I have these stamped, and I can, as I said, go in and cut them out later. So let's put our next page in here, and because this one is full of words, I can put more stamps on here, and I can just use the grid that's on the MISTI to know where to line these up. And I can pick and choose which words I want. I don't know, are you a messy stamper? I didn't know I was until I started doing this kind of more mass production work, and my hands are just covered in ink. I'm trying to pick out my last word. That's gonna go on here. I can move this one down, because I have words everywhere on this page. I like, and I know you probably can't see everything I'm doing here, I like that the MISTI has the grid so that I can see where to put those stamps. And while I have this lined up, might as well, mass produce a few pages. I'm stamping these in black, but a different color could be nice if you had a dark brown, something in a neutral, I would think. That would work best. I may need to get those magnets out of there if I'm having trouble getting those stamps to push down on the edge, but we're doing okay. I like the idea of mass producing words. It makes my crafting quicker and easier to do. I think the next thing I would do after this, doing the same kind of process, would be numbers. And I thought I had some that were, I thought they were a Tim Holtz stamp. I'm going to have to look and see what I have. But, yeah. If you've got your stamping equipment out and you're working on stamps, it might be a nice idea to go in and do some of this mass making for your project. Having a little trouble with adventure. And have a more aged look to him than the others, but I think that's a pretty good application there. So I'm going to do a few more of these. I'll come back and show you what I have accomplished when I'm done. Alright, so I moved on to another stamp, and this one is a solid stamp. And so this one is going to be nice for laying it out and stamping it, but it is going to be a little bit more difficult when it comes to cutting. And I may end up losing a few of these numbers because they're so close together. I mean, it's meant to be a textured background, but I figure it can also work as little individual pieces of ephemera. So we'll see how good it does. Not bad. I think I'm going to have to move this magnet out of the way to get in there. I feel like my sticky grid may need a little extra height to it. Might need to stick a shim or so underneath it. So when you're stamping something this large, you really want to take the time to look to see, am I getting enough ink? I know this one, the numbers themselves are broken. It's supposed to look aged. So I'm not talking about that, but I am talking about bad ink contact with the page. And so you want to take your time and make sure your ink is as black as you want it to be. And the only thing I'm missing is this little corner. And I think I'm just going to try to go into it one more time. So I turn and put some pressure on here. I can feel it's hitting the grids here on the side. I tried centering this one in the panel more, just to kind of get away from, yeah, that's doing better. Just to get away from where it may be causing a little problem. So, all right, I think I'm going to call that one done. And then I will bring in a tea-stained page and stick it in there. Make sure I've got coverage, which I do. And I'll just ink this one up too. And interesting enough, when I pulled my tea stain paper out, it was 8.5 by 11. It's just copy paper. I tore it in half so that it would fit into my platform and work with my stamps. It was the same color as my pages out of my dictionary. Look how close. Here's a scrap of the dictionary. Look how close that is. That's T and that's old dictionary. I called it tea stained paper, but I think I actually did it with coffee. I just had some leftover coffee from the morning and poured it over the paper. I added a few granules of coffee in there too. I know people have done that. I don't know that it worked all that well for me, but you have little things falling off to the side here if you hear added noise. Things are falling off my desk. The part you can't see is a disaster of a mess. Let's turn this so I can get some pressure on here. You can see I'm really putting some pressure on this to get some of the best stamping I can. And that's because the stamp is just so big and I'm stamping a large area. And I have a little bit of a lift problem. I know some of you are going to say that I don't have enough underneath. And I need to go in and fix that. Because my rulers out here are interfering. All right, so there is our tea stained one, and that is going to take some interesting cutting. I think I'm going to have to go in with a very small scissor to go in and work on those shapes, but that will be fun to use. Look at all those numbers all at one go. I mean, I just did a huge process of creating extra ephemera for my stash. And now to clean this off, this is the downside. Is having to clean everything off and put the stamps away after they dry. But this stamp is all in one, so I don't have to worry too much about putting it away or lining it up in its packaging because it is one big stamp. And you can see how much ink I'm getting off of this. And these are, I am using a dye-based ink, but if you go into it while it is still wet, you can lift and clean with a baby wipe. But if you let it sit, it will stain. So you can see this one I've used before and I didn't clean it. And this is pretty juicy wet. So I'm gonna have to set that off to the side and let that dry before I put it away. All right, for this one, I'm going to show you a little cheat that I came up with. You may or may not already know this, but I'm going to share it just in case. So I have my paper in here, and I pulled out my next stamp set that I wanted to work with, and it came with some glue dots on the back side of the plastic. So it's not totally glued down here, but it does have, you can see this is lifting up here. It did have some glue dots, and instead of taking them off and having to peel off these little stamps and lay them out, I just stuck the whole thing to my MISTI using those glue dots. And now, here I have more stuff falling on my desktop, sorry. All right, so now I'm going to go in and just stamp that whole sheet onto my tea-stained paper. And here it is on the book page, the dictionary page, you can see. I don't know what here I can salvage, but, you know, I can decide later when I sit down to cut things out. They may, you know, some of these larger, chunkier ones could be very interesting. But I'll cut them all up and put them in a box. And I can ink them later, around the edges, I mean, after I cut them. So this is a nice way to get a whole sheet of stamps done in one go, is to use a little bit of stick, double-sided tape, glue dot, whatever you have that will work. I mean, you could even just tape over the corners or the edges and hold that stamp in place enough so that you can stamp with it. And I have found that in working on a large sheet like this, that if I turn my MISTI around, I'm going to get different pressure from how I work on it. And I did put some shims in underneath my sticky mat, so those are really nice. Yeah, I'm getting a better coverage on the second inking, and I'm wondering, do I go one more or are we good? I know as the ink dries, it kind of grays out a little bit. And just as a reminder, I am using a dye-based ink, and this is a Versacolor in black. All right, I think I'm gonna call that done for that sheet. And then I need to sit down with some little teeny scissors and cut out shapes. And it looks like I may have even, I don't know if it's moved a little bit. I think I'm gonna do one more on this paper just because I feel like that might have moved on me a little bit. Maybe because I rotated and changed how I was pressing down. I know my sticky grid is no longer stuck in my MISTI. It is loose because I put some shims underneath it. So it is no longer stuck to the base of the MISTI. It is movable. I don't want to show it to you right now because I'm in the middle of stamping. But I did put 2 acetate sheets and 1 grid sheet underneath it. So my sticky mat came with these kinds of sheets, and they have card size grids on them. So I put 1 of those and 2 clear ones underneath. All right, I think that is better. And I like the grade quality of the ink. And I'll show you from this stamp here, which is dark, to the grade one, kind of gives it an aged look. So I like the look of that. All right. So that made that a whole lot easier to stamp by being able to do the whole sheet at one go. And it looks like my paper is sticking on my sticky grid, so I may have to wash that off. But in with another baby wipe to clean up black ink, and my hands are covered. All right, to walk you through what I got stamped in this session is I went ahead and stamped these on white cardstock because I thought I might use them like this, but I'm not happy with the quality of black that I am getting. I don't know if I've had my ink pad open too long, if it's drying out, if it's the quality of the stamp itself, but the blacks just aren't really black enough for me on this white. So I don't know. I may go ahead and cut them down and see what they look like, but not happy with that one. But all right, so the one we started with was this, where we stamped these out over the words, and I wish I had come across that idea of sticking the sheet down with a glue dot, because that would have made these a lot easier to work with instead of having to do it like that. Then here they are over the words. I don't know. Once again, I'll cut them out, see what they look like, put them in the container. I just don't know if I'll use these or not. Then here is a sheet full of little ones I'm going to have to cut out by hand using a little scissor. But I'm happy with the quality of this. And to show you, I think I showed you earlier that here was a heavier application of ink. And in fact, I think it moved on me a little bit, because if we look here at the airmail, you can see this one is blurry and this one is nice and crisp and clean. So this page is not quite as good, although I think I can salvage some of these larger pieces out of it. I think those that look blurry will just hit the trash. But then I have this one that's a little bit lighter in color, and the quality of the stamping is better. And this was the whole sheet that got stamped in once. And here it is on top of the dictionary page. And once again, cutting them down, I'm going to have to see what they look like on top of words, because it just may be too chaotic and too busy. But I have it, and I can work with it. Then we have that big stamp that was actually meant to be a background, but I think that I can cut pieces and parts out of it for ephemera. And I have it on a book page as well. And then I have those original ones I did on tea-dyed paper, and another set on the dictionary page. So that is everything I accomplished in this stamping section, but now I have a lot of cutting ahead of me. So look forward to seeing those in future tutorials, and I will show them to you in the box once I get this done, but it's going to take a little bit of work to go in and cut. So thanks for staying with me on this, and I hope you are enjoying the ideas I'm coming up with for creating some ephemera for you to put in your stash and use in your crafting. I wanted to show you I started to go in and cut these guys down, and I started on my paper trimmer and it tore the paper. So this paper is just a little too delicate to be cut on a trimmer. So I am going to have to go in by hand and cut these down, and I am just kind of cutting off some spaces to make them even. So here's a good example of one where the bottom's smaller than the top, so I want to just go in there and straighten that out. Of course I could do it when I go to use it, but having it done ahead of time is nice. And I went ahead and cut one at an angle to match the angle of the wording, and I don't like it. So yeah, these are going to be nice and probably be more of an added visual element than an actual thing that you would sit and read. They're probably just going to be a textural color on my crafting. So that is where I'm at with these. I wanted to show you that I still have a number of sheets to cut down, but I've started I think this might be 2 or 3 sheets that I cut, and I have ephemera for days already. To show you one thing I did was on some, I cut very close to the stamp, and on others, I left the space around it. Now, keep in mind that leaving enough space around them allows you to cut them down further at another time if you need to. So you can see here I'm not perfectly straight with my cutting on the sides here, and so I could go in and straighten those out a little bit. I don't know if you care for the imperfections or if that even bothers you, but I did start cutting down the blurry page, and it actually looks very nice and looks very aged in its little pieces. So I find that when trying to cut straight lines, using a larger or longer scissor seems to work best, because if you have a small scissor and you go snip, 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 you have the opportunity to curve. I also found that stamping on the words from the dictionary page gave me kind of guides to cut along. So when I go to cut into these words, you can see here that, let me grab a piece of cardstock here. So if I were to cut along the words, that's giving me kind of a guide to cut a straight line. So you may want to pay attention to how you stamp, and that you stamp close to straight with your wording on your old pages, so that when it comes time to cut out, you can cut along those words and be pretty squared to your stamped image.